Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our very first Franchisors.com segment. We are lucky to have Mr. Kyle Smith from Nothing But Cakes here with us today. What we wanted to do is just to create a resource to give back to the franchise space, really have, brands that have really done it the right way, such as Nothing But Cakes here, to really help folks who are trying to determine how to really navigate this crazy space that we all love to really do it better. And who better to ask than the CEO of a wonderful brand like this? So, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to see you guys this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we wanted to do was just to ask about 11 questions. It's going to be uniform across for all of our folks, but obviously you guys are going to have a lot of different things to say. So I think it'll be really cool to kind of hear the differences between everything as the trip goes on. But of course, we're starting with the best. We won't tell everybody else, but we're going to start with the best here. And what we wanted to do is we do understand obviously that there were founders of Nothing But Cakes and that you did come into the fold later on. But obviously you wanted to take the company from one place to where it is now. And I know that, there are changes that come along with that. And so when you came into the company, I'm sure that you kind of had to sit back and really determine what was going on and what you really wanted to change, because that's what you're brought in here to do, is to bring it to the next level. What would you say was really your first inclination for what you needed to, in terms of teams members, what did you need to actually change?
Yeah, I think it was, for the most part, the founders were still incredibly involved with the brand at that point in time, and really just in different ways. Although, one, and Debbie Schwetz has left the brand, Dina remains there today, and so the influence is still really strong. But I think look back on those days, I think it was really a matter of, I think when I came on, it was a time when when the brand was going to take a step forward. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, what I mean is that it was doing incredibly well early on, and it had to. Debbie and Dina did a fantastic job with selecting the right folks initially. Then my task really was to come in and prepare it for growth. It was to really build, even if possible, strengthen the foundation, put process in place, make sure that, and always starts with operations and training, and to get those basic things set up to be able to make sure that if we were going to grow, I knew it was their goal that this thing had to have longevity. This was not a flash in the pan. This was something that they loved and cared about. And so my job was making everything out of this possible by building a team and making sure we put it on a great foundation. And so that's really what it was in the early days. It was a matter of bringing in the right folks to be able to build around and to be able to move this to the next level and get it ready for the growth and the success that it's been able to have, from that point in time.
No, absolutely. And so let's dig into that a little bit. Yep. Would love to just kind of hear about, I think that everybody, when they first start and they want to try and change things for, not necessarily for the better, but, you need to get them prepared for growth, as you kind of said. Was there something in terms of outside help that you thought of that you felt really strongly about adding pretty much immediately, that you felt was really integral to take it to the next level?
Yeah, I think, building around a team, you're always balancing short-term, long-term, I'll call it, profitability objectives along with your operational goals. And so what we really did was, while building the team inside, I think early days we used a lot of, I'll call it kind of third-party assistance. Mm-hmm. And you can do that in many different ways, but whether you have an internal real estate team or you use an external, a third party, we developed a great partnership early on the real estate side. We leveraged that on the technology side. It's a way that early on, as you're trying to scale up, you can feel, look, act a lot bigger than maybe you are with the internal resources you have. So that's really what we started to do. We're building the internal team gradually, and then adding partnerships that really solidified, our processes along the way. That we start, I think we got better at site selection. I think we got better at the selection process of, bringing on new bakery owners and that type of thing. So from there, it was that allowed us to get ready to scale up and be able to grow the brand the right way.
In terms of that process, how has that changed over time from, you have these early on, you have these operators, and then over time, how has that process changed?
Yeah, well, I think in the partnerships piece, I think we've maintained some of those third-party relationships, specifically out there on the real estate and then maybe the technology sides. But what happens is the brand grows, then you start to feel there's much more of that need and the desire to you focus on maybe specialization inside. So your marketing team starts to build. And when there's a lot of people wearing a lot of hats in the early days, what you see is that, I had marketing, for example, now, we've broken that down into our paid media team, our field marketing team, and even allowing and empowering the bakery owners to help themselves with technology and websites that'll allow them to go out and get approved ads that they can place themselves. So it's just, if you watch how that evolves over time, and I think it just becomes much more of where you've got, like I said, a couple folks wearing a lot of hats to much more specialized. As you grow, we're able to add depth of talent.
Totally.
Yeah. Next topic in terms of differentiating the kind of the value proposition. So when you look out into the market and you see your competition, how do you differentiate?
I think it's, quality and handcrafted are the first two things that come to mind if you're talking about the product. If we're talking about the brand, I still put quality at the very, very top of the list. It's probably, for me, it's the culture of the brand, meaning that's our people. The quality of the product is just, I may be biased, but I don't think so. It's just a phenomenal product. The brand was really built off of the premise of get people to try it, and that remains today, and is what hooks you in. So we really do try and differentiate in that way by getting folks to try the product, build around that, and then I think it's what ends up happening out there is that initially we might have looked at ourselves as being an affordable luxury item. And I think really beyond that, what we've found is that this item really plays across, all demographics, and it's not just a high-end item. It's an item that is very, very attainable. And when you receive the item, it makes you feel a little bit special. It's made for you. It is handcrafted, and it's really a special product, and that's really what we've built off of over time. As far as the brand goes, I think the big difference for us, or I think the differentiation is, if you look at it, is that the quality of what we're doing, the profit model is extraordinary, and continues to get better over time. And it's just, we've got great people, and very early on, that was a priority to put this in the right hands with the franchisees, the bakery owners that we've selected, and to this day, I think they're our greatest asset, even in recruiting new bakery owners to the system, is that when they get to hear the recommendation from our other bakery owners and they get that exclusively, it's something we don't take for granted, and work really hard to continue to build that confidence in our team out there.
Absolutely, and I think that you kind of talked a little bit about how the model, and really the fact that these bakery owners are obviously doing really great, because we're here today, and we wouldn't be here if you guys weren't doing awesome. So I think that's definitely fair to point out. But I wanted to kind of dig in a little bit about unit economics. That's something that has been a buzzword around franchise trade shows for about 2 to 3 years now, and I think that it is really important to discuss. So we just kind of wanted to dig in a little bit about how important you guys feel that they are. I think that everybody should feel that they're important, but in addition to that, when did you guys actually start to measure that, and how do you kind of use that to your advantage?
I think it's hugely, it's significantly important to the success of your business. At the end of the day, you've got, you need to have a solid, profitable concept. And I think the only thing we've really gotten better at over on is we require in the franchise agreements, we require that financials be submitted to us on a quarterly basis.
Sure.
And take that seriously. And what you want to do with that is I don't look at that as we're just going through the motions of collecting those. What we need to do with that is we need to take that information, turn it around, and make it useful. Mm-hmm. And so we figure out how to continually just, if you will, dial in on making this thing more and more profitable. And we take a really comprehensive look at it. In the franchise world, when you mention sales, people hear royalties. We just have, as part of my culture, our culture here is that I don't talk about sales without talking about profitability. They have to be linked. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about marketing and efforts that need to be made in order to continue to drive top line in this business. We're always in the same time having conversations about building guest loyalty, about managing costs, really, really effectively for our bakery owners and building something that's sustainable. So it stays very comprehensive. All those pieces are linked, and that's how we try and communicate with our bakery owners, and that's how we've I think continued to try and affect the profit model in a positive way.
You guys kind of dug into leads. You kind of dug into it a little bit about sales, and what I wanted to kind of go through a little bit more is that obviously the way that the franchise space is finding leads has really changed a lot. And I think it would be helpful for people just to kind of understand where you guys got your leads from in the early years and how that's evolved over time, and how as a brand that's as successful as you guys really finding these awesome bakery owners. I think it'll just be really helpful for some folks who are listening just to kind of figure out how to get it.
We were fortunate. I'm going to say really, you need a little bit of that, I think, as you get started. But the brand, there was an affinity for the brand, a passion for the brand that early on, that a lot of the folks that became the first bakery owners in the system, it was their experience with the product. So they fell in love with it. It was easy early on, and everything. And I think to almost a fault, you can say that all of our leads were very organic. We were getting about 5,000 leads a year. That turned into about 300 applicants and about 30 to 40 new bakery openings a year. So it was a process that early on, I think you could almost take that a little bit for granted, and we've had to, as markets have become more penetrated, and we've moved off into new markets where there was low brand awareness. We had to change. We have to evolve in that, and you couldn't just say we were just going to let this thing be organic anymore. And we've partnered with some folks to go out in the digital space now and get involved in that area. And we're taking more strategic approach to using whether it's a few of the websites, how we even take advantage of our website, and some other publications that we're going into now. We're having to be more aggressive with it. I don't think we can just sit back and expect that it's going to work. We're being much more targeted and focused on that now. Early days, we were lucky in a lot of ways that it's the affinity for the brand, as I said, it really helped us generate a tremendous amount of leads. That was a wonderful place to be, but you can't take that for granted.
In terms of franchise sales, as you're bringing these folks into the system, how has that process changed as you're awarding licenses? How has that changed over time?
Yeah, we still approach it really for the most part, probably 90% of the time, one bakery at a time. And I think, again, from the early days, I think to Debbie and Dina's credit and the team in the early day, I think they really understood, I think, the type of person, the values that they had to have present in their interview process, that they really understood who it was they wanted to have as a part of this brand, who they felt was a good fit. What we've really tried to do is just refine that. Like anything else, we'll go through, I think, in more detail maybe, whether it's the financial, the background checks and that type of thing, and profiles that we do. But we really just we've tried to just hone it in. We said there were, 3 values that we thought were critical, for us, and we try and lock in on those 3 values, and because it's the most important decision, I think, in business, but in franchising in particular, is the hands you're placing it into. And if you get that right, that is the culture and future of your brand. And I think they did a great job early on. We've just tried to be really responsible for that or with that, and continue to set a high bar and not compromise.
Do you use the FDD as a sales tool in that process?
Yeah. And I think over time, as more and more as we have the item 19s, and we've put a lot more information in that over time. So so I think that's been an important tool. I think it has evolved, and the importance of it has evolved over time as well. And I think we're using it more strategically than we did in the past.
Got it.
Awesome. So we kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper into some secrets that you may have for some folks about how to keep a good relationship with your franchisees. Obviously, it's not there is no secret sauce, but it would be really helpful for some people to kind of understand with a brand that has scale like you guys, how you guys do it, and any recommendations that you may have for folks who are first starting out, just so they can help navigate those sometimes choppy waters.
Yeah, listen more than you talk. Is that the adage? I think it's just kind of, I think you have to believe if you're going to be successful in a franchise model, you've I think you've got to have this balance of, you've got to be able to listen, but you've got to be geared towards support. And you've got to believe to the core that the success of your bakery owners, your franchisees, is the success of your brand. And I think you've got to be accessible and available to them, and you got to work really hard at it. At the end of the day, I think it probably, for any franchise system, being able to discuss the strategic challenges that you'll have as a brand together, to make decisions collaboratively, and it's a struggle. I'm not going to tell you we always get it right by any means, but you cannot back out of it. And I think as you get larger, and now with us having over 300 bakeries, my philosophy right now is to think big, but we're going to get a lot smaller in our mentality on the communication side. And if that means that the regional meetings, we go out and we try and be. Dina gets on the road with me and the executive team, and we go out and we do our town hall meetings. But those town hall meetings have grown in size now, so that they're larger than the first conferences I was attending. With the brand. So I'm just an adjustment. I'm changing this year. This year I'm going out to markets individually and just sitting down and having lunch with bakery owners in a given market, and just trying to understand a little bit about what their needs are and how they're feeling about their brand, and making sure that they feel like even as this thing grows, that they're not a number, that they have a voice. And it is not, again, I think it's one of the largest challenges that a franchisor has as they're growing. And again, I think you have to recognize that, and I think you've got to continually look for ways to evolve, and but stay present, stay engaged, stay with them, stay kind of true to the purpose of what your brand is all about, and just understand that our role is to be there to support them.
Beyond getting out there in person, and I love that you do the regional town halls, are there any other communication tools that you use, or any other tools or tips on that front?
You have to keep up, man, on the technology front, I think. And I don't think we've been great at that. I think in the early days, and this is what I was saying about maybe as you get larger, you got to go back to some of the things you did when you were smaller. And so I think we do a pretty good job with a web portal and communications to go out to the bakeries. And there's always a balance between the right amount of communication and delivering it at the right time. These folks are busy. They're out there. They're operating and taking care of our guests. And a lot of them are new bakery owners that are learning how to do this. So we try to be very, very cognizant of what's going on in their world, when to deliver, and how to deliver information that they need to have, so that they can stay in stride with what we're doing as a brand, and how we're moving forward with with our operations and our marketing, et cetera. So I think that we can do things. Certainly, even I've recently even started going back out and putting a regular communication out on our web portal, just to the bakery owners, just to stay in touch. And I'd gotten away from that for a period of time, and I think is again just going to get a little bit smaller and kind of get back to some of those basic things. You can certainly use technology and webinars and video conferencing, and I think that over time our plan is to use more of that as well.
Got it.
Absolutely. I wanted to dig in a little bit into culture. We walked around your office this morning while we were setting up, and it was unmistakable how nice people were around here. I kind of felt like I was back home in the Midwest, so it was really nice to kind of have that culture. How did you guys? I mean, I know that when you came into the business, I'm sure that there was a certain element of culture. I mean, you joined it for a reason, I'm sure, but how did you guys really cultivate that culture, and how do you guys feel that that's really ingrained, and how have you guys how have you guys had the ability to do that for not only your employees here, but also the franchisees and the employees that the franchisees have too?
Yeah, I think I go back to, I'll probably repeat myself a couple times, I think is the things that just have to stay really, really top of mind, that they have to be really intentional. There's a purpose with what we do, how we communicate, who we select to be a part of the team. All those things all accumulate, and so just as important, on the bakery owner selection side, the franchisee selection side, we'll always say the bakery owner side, so that's my tendency on that. But the same thing on the selection process of the support team. The same type of values have to exist. They have to understand why, when they're in this, what our expectations are. And I think it takes time. I think to this point, I'm super proud of where the team has developed. and where they've come to at this point in time is the largest number of folks that we've had, and quite honestly, I think it's the most that I'm happiest with the culture today that I have ever been. And I think that just takes a lot of work on everybody's parts. Each one of the executive team members, as they're recruiting and building their teams, they have to be aligned with that, and they have to believe in that just as much as I do. And I think if we consistently demonstrate that to our bakery owners, and we hope that message, I always say, cascades through the brand, that they'll feel that from the time that they're going through their final interviews with us. And the same thing would hold true with our team members, is that they understand that that's supremely important for us. So we try and pay real close attention to it. And if we don't always get it right, then we stay after it and try and make sure that we stay focused on making the right decisions down the road.
And do you have any advice for emerging franchisors who are trying to find a way to instill that culture when they're first getting started? Obviously, you mentioned very early on in the podcast that you're wearing a lot of hats when you first get started. So do you have any recommendations for how to keep people strong and keep people smiling through those early days?
Yeah, maybe it's just that I talked about the purpose or intention. I think things that I've learned along the way, that maybe to go out there, and as you're starting a brand, I think it really helps to understand exactly who you are as a brand. Your purpose. We're going through that. The Simon Sinek, starting with why. We're still going through things like that today. Going to the annual conference this weekend. We have our annual conference in Vegas, and I'm going to introduce that to our bakery owners. And I think early on, I believe that we really did have a pretty good understanding of where we are and who we were, but you have to have that in order to decide what's really important, what matters, and how you're going to move forward then and build a team around that. And those things have to be conveyed, and they have to, there has to be consequence to it. It has to be measured. And I think that's how you start to build a team. And so the advice I would have early on is even if you can't develop that, and it's hard to develop that internally, go outside and get help with it. Really be able to find, and it's not the poster on the wall with everybody rowing in the same direction, and I'm not trying to get to that, but it is really truly understanding who you are as a brand, where your priorities are aligned, and the values you have, and you're going to hire to. And if you do that, and you believe it kind of to the core, and it becomes your DNA, you've got a chance to be really successful. But it's really hard to get started if you don't have those things, I think, nailed down. So everything has a purpose and an intent as you move forward, as you begin to build a team around those principles.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. By the way, for the folks listening that might have missed that, Start With Why is a TED Talk by Simon Sinek. It's really good.
It's a great TED Talk.
Next topic is threats. As the guardian of the brand, when you're looking at even from a competitor standpoint, and then also from a business model standpoint, we've had a lot of action on Capitol Hill. We've had some scares. So how are you looking at and monitoring and on top of threats?
Yeah, there are certainly, as you mentioned, there are threats in all directions. I think when you look at it, and I think, I'm probably referring a little bit to going to conference this year and talking to our bakery owners about it, but I think that's one of the things they expect from us, is to keep our head up and to be aware of what those threats are, and whether it's as you look at it out there, whether it's in really top of their mind, these days is employment market is critically tight, and that is one of the biggest challenges. Staffing is one of the biggest challenges I think that all of our businesses have right now, but certainly ours is no different. Minimum wage, you look at tariffs and all those things. We import a lot of our decorations come from overseas, so we're always trying to stay on top of what's happening with those things. It all incorporates into our profit model. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing for me is as an organization, if you keep your head up and you're aware of those things, and if you are aligned with your franchisees, you can take those challenges on. I firmly believe that. And I think the biggest thing that I have out in front of us right now that I worry about today is one thing, complacency. And it's when I think we've had success. We've had a lot of success over the years, and and I think that complacency, that success at times, you tend to. I think one of the sayings goes, you tend to lose your curiosity, and I think that what that really means is you've lost some of your drive. You've gotten a little bit complacent, and if you keep your head down, I think those challenges have a chance to come up and smack you. But I do believe that, as a business leader, that what we have to do is we have to keep our head up, keep driving, be aware of those changes, and then as an organization, tackle them together. And I think that we're prepared to do that. And I think that's, that comes from, I think, the collective, body of folks in this brand being really committed to working together. And I feel really good about our chances of kind of getting through all those challenges and obstacles.
And I love how he just answered that. It ties back to the franchise relations and the communication, and kind of that's a thread throughout, because you're not handling that alone.
Absolutely.
You're communicating it with the folks. So last topic is looking back. Looking back, is there anything that you would do differently if you were an emerging brand today? You're a very established brand, but is there anything that you would do differently in the early stages of growth?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes top of mind, it's a pretty easy one to me, is embracing technology. I think it just early on, it wasn't as much of a priority, but the world we live in today is fast-paced, fast-changing. I think there's so many different ways that I would say that, but we've struggled with some areas that we were late adapters, and we're working hard to catch up. But I think if I could, if I turn the clock back a little bit, I think there are some things that, especially technology in the sense that I think it would allow us as the caretakers of the brand to make better decisions. It's just being more, more informed, whether it's transactionally, at the bakery or marketing wise, and understanding who our guests were and where they were coming from. Again, we're very fortunate that I think the brand had the type of early success that it had, and it didn't really set us back. But I think we are catching up on it, and it's one of those areas right now that I look at as an opportunity. If I could turn it back a little bit, I probably would have got a jump start on that, because almost by the time you get caught up, you're behind again. So, it's just that fast paced and ever changing. So that's probably the one area I look back on and say, embrace that early on, figure out how you can make it work for you. And I think it will really help your future.
And if you don't embrace it early on, it's very tough.
Yes,
it will be. It's a lot tougher.
Much more so.
And I was going to ask, what's one thing that you guys did really early on that you would say is really unique that has kind of helped shape the way that the company is today?
I'm going to give you two. I think the first thing I really believe that Debbie and Dina did it right in their selection process. Dina talks about this being her third child, and I think that they really took so much care in whose hands they placed this brand into, and then no compromise on the quality of the product. They just, still today, relentlessly committed to the quality of that product. It's right there, along with the people. It's the foundation of our brand. So I think those two things they did phenomenally well. The brand built off of those, those two cornerstones, and I think we're hanging on to them now because I think it's still the key.
Absolutely. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for hopping on with us today, and really looking forward to seeing you over the many franchise conferences in the future. And thanks again.
Thanks for having me, and good luck with the tour.